It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode. Yes, the Real Estate Breakfast every morning as we cover the latest property news. And of course, you will find us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as Amazon. Well, the week is flying by, isn't it? It's already the 15th day of February, the day after Valentine's Day, which I forgot to mention on the podcast yesterday, because often blokes need prompts. I remember last year we received a couple of emails saying, thank you so much for reminding me it was Valentine's Day. I had forgotten. Yeah, apologies if you were one of those people looking for a prompt, because sometimes we need constant reminders. And fellas, did you make it a memorable night? Did you go the extra mile and pay attention to the details? Because no matter what you think about the commercial side of Valentine's Day, and it is unquestionably commercial and has become this whole expectation that many of us men don't bother about, but you do bother about it for one big reason, and let me tell you why. The girlfriend-to-girlfriend chat the next day when one girlfriend says to the other, what did he get you? And you don't want to have that answer, nothing. He forgot about me. So let's go to Perth this morning and catch up with Matthew Hughes, the founder and managing director of Capital Property Advisory. And Matthew, you would not forget about Valentine's Day for your lovely wife, would you?
I value my life too much, Craig. I've got the benefit of my wife's birthday being about a week after Valentine's Day, and then 2 weeks later is my daughter's birthday, and 2 weeks later is my son's birthday. So I get from the start of the year to plan for all of those things and then knock them all out in quick succession. And I've got a pretty good track record of making everyone happy. So hopefully I've done the same this year. We went out to dinner last night, and because it's my wife's 40th birthday this year, we cracked a 40-year-old bottle of wine that I bought her many years ago. We've been holding on to it, and we enjoyed that last night at the restaurant that we got engaged at. So yeah, it was a lovely night.
Talking of celebrations, you have got something that you're celebrating. In fact, 10 years working as a buyer's agent in WA. That's a lot of property buying and a lot of, sort of intermingling with all these investors that are coming in.
It is, absolutely. Yeah, it's a big milestone. I've been in the industry a bit longer than 10 years. I started out a couple of years as a selling agent and then realised pretty quickly that's not what I wanted to do. And then I became a buyer's agent, I think it's 10 years ago in August this year. We've now sort of hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions and dealt with many investors and home buyers in Perth, and a lot of success stories. And so we're sort of reflecting on that at the moment, and we're going to celebrate mid-year and head off for our first elongated holiday with the kids. We're taking a month off and heading to Europe in June to celebrate the milestone that we've achieved.
Yeah, well, that is definitely something to look forward to. Let's this morning, Matthew, get into your mind, because I want to find out some of the key factors an experienced buyer's agent in Perth will consider when assessing the location, for example, of a potential investment property and what your thinking might be.
Yeah, so I guess from a macro level, we update all of our research on a quarterly basis. Myself and the team sit down and review where we're buying and why, make sure that things are trending in the direction that we thought they would be. And that typically starts with looking at local governments initially. There's a number of suburbs that we don't buy in purely because we don't favour the local government, whether they're not very progressive or pro-development, or whether they just have a history of poor town planning decisions. So it starts at that level, and then we drill down to suburbs within that local government area, and then we're looking at obviously pockets within those suburbs, because even though we green light a suburb for investment purposes, it doesn't necessarily mean the entire suburb is green lit. In fact, it's quite often not the case. There's pockets we do buy in and pockets that are completely blacklisted for various reasons. When we're starting at that local government area, we've spoken previously about why we're not buying in the Rockingham local government area, and we didn't have to get too far into the research for that one. And it's sort of, sometimes we'll just hit a roadblock where we can't get comfortable with certain statistics at a high level. And in that particular case, it was the amount of renters in the area, which is probably pushing 50% at the moment. And that's too high for us. So it gets to a quick no there and we move on to other areas, which makes it hard for us because we don't buy in a lot of areas. And we do have a very short list, possibly the shortest list of approved suburbs of any buyer's agent in Perth. But it does mean that our clients are getting the better outcomes over the long term and a really solid understanding of which suburbs are going to outperform consistently over the long term.
And of course, when you are doing all of this buying, it comes down to a lot of analysis, which we talk about. So how does the buyer's agent normally analyse the property market trends for an area like a Perth in order to provide advice to investors?
Yeah, I guess we're not just sort of reading the headlines in the paper and looking at what the next hotspot is supposed to be. Often we're not buying in the hotspots. We're looking for long-term trends in demographic shifts. We're looking at income changes within a suburb. We're looking at town planning decisions within a suburb that might impact the demographic in the area. We're looking at population growth and where that population growth is coming from and what sort of incomes those people have. So we're really digging into this right down to a micro level to decide where we're going to buy and what trends we see emerging. And what we're essentially looking for is an affordable suburb. Sometimes they're lower socioeconomic suburbs, but they're showing signs of gentrifying over time. And we've got a pretty good track record of outperforming the market from that perspective and getting into these areas at the right time. And not necessarily always having the best 1 year or 2 year performance, because that tends to belong to the so-called hotspots. But if you look at our performance over the 10 years that I've been a buyer's agent, you'll see a consistent outperformance of the median with less downside risk in a soft market. And that's what we're looking at for our clients, because our clients typically are those a little bit more savvy, a little bit more long-term view investors. They're not just looking to jump in and out of markets over the short term. That's not our investment philosophy, and it tends to align with what our clients are looking for.
Okay, all right. So that is Matthew. He's been going almost 10 years as a buyer's agent. And we will come back. We'll talk more about the Perth property market after this.
Every week, real estate transactions take place as the market shifts month by month. And every day, we keep you better informed and updated on the Real Estate Podcast.
Well, it's going to be a tricky year, 2024, for the building industry. The commencement of new house builds in Australia has plummeted since mid-2021 due to surging interest rates, living expenses, of course, and material costs, which have exacerbated by the waning effects of the Home Builder Stimulus program. Now, builders advocate for increased government aid for first-time home buyers, and they're asking for structural reform. GJ Gardner Homes have noted that $50,000 to $70,000 hikes in home costs are dampening buyer enthusiasm. And the slowdown has, of course, repercussions for suppliers, with some projects on hold or completely scrapped. However, there is a little bit of optimism for recovery in this year, 2024, contingent on substantial support and reforms to alleviate those cost burdens. So yes, as I said, it's going to be a tricky year in the building industry.
Decode the property market with insider knowledge and insights to better navigate your real estate journey on the Real Estate Podcast.
And it is a Thursday real estate morning. I know, where has the working week gone? And we are talking this morning to Matthew Hughes, the founder and managing director of Capital Property Advisory there in Perth. And we talk a lot about due diligence, so let's just step over what you and the team do when it comes to assessing the physical condition of a dwelling there in Perth.
Yeah, I guess the initial inspection starts with our at-desk assessment of a property, and we can figure out a fair bit from our desktop nowadays with all the technology that's available to us and the historical data that we can download. It starts also with us looking back for old images on CoreLogic or other platforms, so we can see whether or not there's been some renovation done to the property. Have they renovated it for sale or for their own purposes? Because often the quality can differ based on those two scenarios. And then when we go out and do an inspection for our client, if they're with us, great, we can talk them through everything as they walk through the actual property physically with us. But often at the moment, we're dealing with East Coast or international investors. And so what we're doing is a video walkthrough with commentary. And we're pointing out things that we obviously like about the property, but we're also looking for any potential risks or any potential negatives in relation to the condition of the dwelling. So all of that we're looking at as best we can in a home open. And then we're structuring a contract that allows us to cover as much of that risk as possible. So in WA, the contracts are a little bit more consumer friendly than they are on the East Coast. Often you can get away with putting in an offer that is subject to finance. We never put in offers unless it's for a developer. We never put in an offer without a building and pest clause on it. And often we're still able, even in this market without a ton of leverage, we're still able to get our good working order clause in there, probably about 70% of the time, which allows us to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, uncover all of the issues and figure out what we can push back on the seller to rectify pre-settlement. So that works well for our clients in terms of managing their risk and making sure we're not walking into a laundry list of problems that they have to fix post-settlement.
Yeah, sort of managing the list, that is critical. That's a big part of obviously what you are doing. But how does a buyer's agent, particularly in Perth, navigate the things like tax, legal and regulatory considerations for property investors? Because there's always something to sort of pick up on when it comes to the legalities.
There is, yeah. I guess if we start with the legality side of things, obviously as licensed real estate agents, we have to keep up to date with all the latest legislation, and we do. We've got a team training and development officer that works with our team over and above the minimum criteria that's set by the body that governs that in WA. So we're about as well trained internally as you can be. And then from a tax and a legal perspective for our clients, when I'm talking about more holistic advice for a client about building a multiple property portfolio, or I'm also a licensed mortgage broker as well. We don't do that, but I've got that knowledge. So when we're talking to clients holistically and giving that longer term strategic portfolio advice, we do delve into things like tax accounting and the legal side of things, but only to the point where I identify a need for them to go and get qualified advice from professionals in that area. Obviously, we're very careful not to give any tax advice or legal advice because we're not qualified to do so. But my experience throughout the years as a business owner, as an investor, as a developer, having dealt with all this stuff myself and having a dozen entities currently under our control, I understand this enough to identify potential issues or opportunities and then push our client towards a solid professional in those areas to get the right advice to make sure they're not making any mistakes or to make sure they're maximising their tax outcomes.
Yeah, all about maximising those tax outcomes. All right then, so great to catch up. Great to know that you got your head above the waterline in terms of Valentine's Day. Look forward to catching up next time, Matthew, and enjoy your working Thursday morning.
Catch up with you soon, Craig.
Let's explore together the power of real estate. We keep you better informed and updated.
You're on your break, you're on your holiday, trying to relax, forget about the real estate, but everybody is asking you for your opinion about the real estate market as if you have a direct portal link into the inevitable outcomes in the unknown world of real estate.
Yeah, there's a lot of people focusing on their strategies for the new year, trying to get ahead of what the outlook is going to be and how they can adapt. And it's, funnily enough, a little bit of a slow time for data too. So I don't always have the clearance rates on hand when auctions haven't quite started up yet. Yeah, it's always a busy period and good to be in demand.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.